Have you ever felt awake, yet completely trapped in your own body? What if the things you saw in that state weren't just in your head? I never believed in ghosts, not until one night when I woke up, unable to move, and saw her. There she was, an old woman, rocking back and forth in the chair across the room. The thing is, I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Every night the same thing happened, but tonight was different. I could feel her presence, moving closer, as if she was waiting for something. But it wasn't until that moment, when I saw her smiling, that I realized this was no dream. Who or what was really sitting in that chair? And what was she waiting for? Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss what happened next. But before we start, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow so you'll never miss a spine-tingling episode. If you're enjoying our content, please give us a like, drop a comment, and share this video to help us reach 100 likes. Every like brings us one step closer to the next terrifying episode. And if you want even more creepy content, follow us on our social media platforms for the latest updates. Thank you all for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. My name is Isaac, and there was a time when I couldn't escape the relentless grip of sleep paralysis. It wasn't just the feeling of being trapped in my own body, it was the hallucinations that came with it. I'd wake up, knowing I was conscious, yet unable to move a single muscle. I could hear everything, feel everything, but I couldn't act on it. My body was a prison. These episodes became so frequent that I couldn't tell what was real and what was just a figment of my tortured mind. There's one night, though, that changed everything and pushed me to the brink of insanity. At first, the episodes were relatively benign, just the familiar paralysis. But over time, they evolved into something more sinister. One night, I woke up and saw something that made my blood run cold. I was trapped, as usual, unable to move. But then I saw myself. I was standing near my bed, watching my own frozen body. It was as if I was looking at a ghostly twin. I didn't have a twin, but there I was, standing, staring back at myself. The terror that gripped me was unimaginable, and once I finally managed to break free, I couldn't shake the image. Desperate for help, I decided to see a specialist, Dr. Henderson. He gave me sleeping pills and assured me that the episodes would pass with time. He explained that there was no real treatment for sleep paralysis other than improving sleep hygiene. Go to bed at the same time every night, keep the room quiet and comfortable, avoid caffeine before sleep. I followed his advice for a month, and for a while, it worked. I began to think that maybe I was finally free of the nightmares. But then, one evening, I fell asleep on my couch in the living room of my new apartment, a place I had just moved into, so it was mostly empty except for the essentials. There was the couch, a TV, a lamp, and an old rocking chair. The chair had been there when I moved in. I assumed it belonged to the previous tenant, but I didn't mind. It was just an extra piece of furniture that added character to the room. That night, as I drifted into another episode, I woke up to the usual paralysis. But this time, things were different. I couldn't just see myself. I wasn't alone. In the corner of the room, seated in that rocking chair, was a woman. She appeared to be in her late 70s, with frail gray hair and a haggard face. She wasn't facing me, and she didn't make a sound. She just rocked back and forth, the chair creaking rhythmically. I knew, of course, that I was alone in the apartment, and I also knew that this woman wasn't really there. But sleep paralysis has a way of warping reality. As I lay there, paralyzed, her presence felt so real that I couldn't shake the fear that she was somehow part of my waking world. This phenomenon became a nightly occurrence. Every time I experienced sleep paralysis, I would see her sitting there, rocking endlessly. And every time, as soon as I broke free from the paralysis, she would disappear. I convinced myself it was just a hallucination brought on by my condition. After all, Dr. Henderson had explained that sleep paralysis often comes with vivid, frightening hallucinations. One day, I mentioned her to Dr. Henderson, and he agreed that it was nothing more than a manifestation of my sleep disorder. I decided to try meditation before bed, as he suggested. It helped for a while. I went weeks without an episode, and began to feel some semblance of normalcy again. But then came the night that I wish I could forget. I had invited my friend Daniel over for the evening. We watched a football match and had a few beers, and since Daniel had a bit too much to drink, he stayed the night. We slept in my room. Around 3 a.m., I heard heavy breathing, close to my face. As I opened my eyes, I was met with the most horrifying sight imaginable. The woman from the rocking chair was leaning over me, her frail gray hair falling over my face like a curtain. Her eyes were wide open, staring directly into mine. She didn't speak, but I could feel the weight of her presence pressing down on me. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I realized I was in another episode, and in my panic I desperately told myself, "This isn't real. It's just my imagination." But then, to my absolute horror, she whispered, "You think I'm not real, huh?" I couldn't breathe. I was frozen, unable to move or cry out for help. The woman slowly stood up and began walking toward Daniel's side of the bed. She had this sickening smile on her face, one that seemed to stretch unnaturally wide. She leaned over him, just like she had leaned over me, and then her jaw began to expand. It stretched impossibly wide, and her mouth opened like a cavern, revealing rows of jagged teeth. She leaned down, and with a sickening slowness, began to devour Daniel's head. I could see his face disappear into her mouth, his body twitching in silent agony. I wanted to move, to do something, anything, but I was trapped in my own body. I could only watch in paralyzing terror. Then, suddenly, my alarm went off, and I sprang up in bed, screaming. Daniel shot up next to me, looking around in confusion. "What the hell happened?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I mumbled something about the woman, but then I blacked out. The next thing I remember, I woke up in a hospital room, my heart still pounding in my chest. Daniel had taken me to the ER. The doctors thought I'd suffered a panic attack due to the alcohol, but I knew better. Dr. Henderson was informed, and I ended up staying in intensive care for a week, undergoing tests. Daniel still doesn't know what happened that night, and I don't think I'll ever be able to explain it to him. Before I left the apartment, I decided to ask the landlord about the history of that old rocking chair. His face grew serious when I brought it up. "Many years ago, this place was a healthcare facility for the mentally unstable," he said. "One of the patients, a woman in her 60s, was notorious for her violent behavior. She couldn't stand the sight of children and once tried to devour a newborn. People thought she was possessed. She would sit in that chair for hours, rocking back and forth. She was one of the worst cases we had." After hearing that, I was certain the apartment was cursed. But the strangest thing is this: every tenant before me never mentioned anything unusual. No one had seen the woman or experienced anything like I did. I don't know if it was just my mind playing tricks, but I'll never forget the terror she brought. A few weeks ago, I bumped into Daniel at a bar. I noticed a strange ring of bruises on his forehead. Bruises that weren't there before. When I asked him about them, he paused, looked at me strangely and said, "I must have fallen from my rocking chair." I've been dealing with sleep paralysis for as long as I can remember. At first, I thought it was just a normal part of sleep, something everyone went through. My parents reassured me that it was harmless, and I never really thought to question it. I didn't have any hallucinations or terrifying visions, just the familiar sensation of waking up and being completely unable to move. I'd open my eyes, look around, and feel trapped. But that was it. It was always a bit unsettling, sure, but nothing I couldn't handle. However, one particular night when I was 11, everything changed. It was just another school night after a nice, relaxing weekend. My parents tucked me in, and like any other evening, I cuddled up with my plush doll and drifted off to sleep. I never understood why my brain would wake me up during the night. One moment, I'd be asleep, and the next, I'd be wide awake, but completely paralyzed. But that night, something felt different. I woke up, and immediately, an uneasy feeling crept over me. There was a weight in the air, a sense of something being off. I lay there, listening. Through the thick silence of the night, I began to hear soft footsteps coming from downstairs. My dad sometimes stayed up late, so I tried to shake off the fear, assuming it was him. But these footsteps, they weren't casual. They were slow, deliberate, and cautious. Panic set in. It wasn't just a normal sound. The footsteps made their way up the stairs, each creak of the floorboards sending a shiver down my spine. As a kid, I could always tell the difference between someone walking naturally and someone trying to be quiet. The latter felt wrong. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they reached my bedroom door and stopped. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe properly. My mind raced, but I remembered what my parents always said about sleep paralysis. They warned me that it was common to experience hallucinations during these episodes, nightmares that felt all too real. They told me to just keep reminding myself it wasn't real and that it would end soon. So, I squeezed my eyes shut and whispered to myself, "It's just a dream, just a dream." But after what felt like an eternity, I opened my eyes again, and the door was slowly creaking open. A man stepped inside, his shadow stretching across the room. I froze, too terrified to even blink. I slammed my eyes shut once more, praying that this nightmare would end. The sound of his footsteps on the wooden floor grew louder as he walked closer to my bed, each step dragging me deeper into terror. Then, I felt it. Breathing, hot, damp air against my shoulder, and then the worst part. I felt the soft pressure as my doll was gently pulled from my side. The footsteps receded, retreating toward the far side of the room. My heart raced as I dared to open my eyes just slightly. There he was, walking away with my doll, his back turned to me as he quietly closed the door behind him. I still couldn't move, still couldn't scream. I closed my eyes tightly again, fighting to control my emotions. Every dark thought filled my mind, every terrifying scenario imaginable playing out in my head. I don't even remember falling back asleep. Morning came, and for the first time in a long while, I woke up feeling somewhat at peace. I checked around the room to make sure the nightmare hadn't come back. But then my eyes fell on the spot where my doll should have been. It wasn't there. My stomach dropped. The relief I'd felt vanished instantly, and a wave of dread washed over me. I ran to my parents' room, tears already welling up in my eyes. They weren't exactly surprised. They'd always expected something like this to happen. They'd heard me talking about my sleep paralysis episodes before. Dad got up right away, coming to my room to help me look for the doll. He thought I had just misplaced it, that it would turn up like it always did when I couldn't find it. But it didn't. He wasn't worried at first. He knew how much the doll meant to me, so he searched the entire house, hoping it was just hiding somewhere. But after checking every room, closet, and corner, we couldn't find it, and we never did. There's something oddly enchanting about dreams, how elusive, abstract, and nonsensical they can be. They pull you into strange realms where logic has no dominion and reality seems to fray at the edges. But what happens when that strange dream logic seeps into what we call the real world? I learned the answer one night in the most terrifying way. It began like any other night. I'd gone to sleep listening to ambient rain sounds through my headphones, trying to soothe the anxious restlessness that had been haunting me for days. At some point during the night, I entered REM sleep, drifting into an intense and unsettling dream. In it, I was wandering through the dense forests of Ebon Hollow, a place I'd never seen before, yet felt disturbingly familiar. The woods were suffocatingly quiet, save for the crunch of leaves under my feet and the occasional sharp snap of twigs behind me. I wasn't alone. I could feel something following me. I never saw it clearly, just glimpses, a silhouette darting between trees, a flash of pale skin, the glint of eyes reflecting moonlight. Whatever it wasn't human. Its movements were too erratic, its shape too wrong, and its presence filled me with dread. But just as the fear was peaking, everything blurred. The trees, the creature, even the forest floor faded like chalk in the rain. I was awake, or so I thought. I lay in my bed in my room in Grayson Hill, breathing heavily, heart pounding. But I couldn't move, not a finger. My limbs were frozen, locked in place. Panic crawled through my body like a fever. Then came the sound. At first, it was a faint mechanical whine, like a dying battery trying to start but somehow alive. It had a strange cadence, repeating every few seconds. A synthetic, almost insectoid noise that wormed its way into my skull. With each repetition, it grew slightly louder, more piercing, closer. My eyes darted around the room, the only part of me I could control. That's when I noticed the closet. The door was ajar. That might not sound like much, but I never leave my closet open. Ever. It was just a narrow crack, but something was behind it. A face, or something that resembled one, was peering through. Its skin was pale and sagging, its eyes too wide, as if pinned open. But the worst part was the mouth. It stretched impossibly wide into a jagged grin that looked more like a wound than a smile, as if someone had carved it into the face. Every time the strange sound echoed again, it seemed to draw the closet and the face slightly closer. My pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but my throat was paralyzed. The noise became unbearable, like static laced with agony. Then, as if the moment couldn't get more surreal, the closet door slammed shut, not slowly or subtly, but violently, with a deafening crack. The sound stopped. The face vanished. Silence filled the room like a thick fog. A moment later, I could move again. My limbs responded as if waking from a coma. Shaking and drenched in sweat, I bolted from my bed and sprinted down the hall. At 25 years old, I found myself pounding on my father's door like a child. He opened it groggily, confused. I begged him to check my closet. He gave me a strange look but followed me back to my room without complaint. He flicked on the light and opened the closet. Nothing. Just clothes and shoes. Not a trace of whatever I had seen or imagined. My dad listened calmly as I recounted what happened. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "It sounds like sleep paralysis. I've had it once myself. It can feel real. Too real." But that didn't bring me comfort, because I knew what I had seen. The sound, the face, that smile. It wasn't just a dream. Something had crossed over, stepped through the fragile veil between waking and sleep, and it had seen me. I've since tried to rationalize it. Sleep science, stress, exhaustion. But every night when I climb into bed, I still glance at that closet door, just to make sure it's tightly shut. Because deep down, I believe whatever it was is still there, waiting for the next moment I'm too tired, too vulnerable, too unaware to keep it out. If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most. And if you could survive only one of these stories, which one would it be? Also, drop "I made it" and mention our channel in the comments below. I want to know who my loyal followers are so I can give you a shout out in our next videos. And lastly, if you've experienced a terrifying encounter or have a horror story to share, send it to us on Reddit. And if you want to support the channel and help us create even more spine-chilling content, check out our Patreon or Ko-Fi. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to like and share the video, and now, stay tuned for our next horror episode.